Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome back to The Motivating Force. Joining me today, we have Josue, an aspiring Marine Corps officer who's finishing up ROTC and his bachelor's in the criminal justice field. And myself, Justin, an aspiring motivational leader who's always more than excited to share our wonderful ideas and topics with you guys.
Let's get political. So this week, I was talking about at the beginning of the week that we're going to be philosophy heavy this episode. And I know I just started off by saying political because we're going to be talking about political philosophy. And this is a field that Plato was known for. And he was a Greek philosopher from the mid 420s BC to the late 340s BC. And no, I'm not talking about a dish in Spanish, Plato, but Plato, that's his name. He's an Athenian philosopher, and he's known as the founder of the Platonist school of thought and the academy. And usually when you see those those drawings of the Greek philosophers gathered around, like with this column structure with like a ring around it, that's what was known as the academy. Like that's where all these philosophers would group together and start talking about like different philosophies and these ideas that they had, and they would converse about it, and their teachings would grow.
And that was all him.
Yeah, it was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. So we're talking about Plato as the philosopher, but I'm not really going to dig deep into who he is. I'm going to be digging deep into like some of his quotes and his teachings, and we're going to be relating them to current, real world examples that we can all relate to nowadays. Because I did want to push a disclaimer, seeing how this is a political discussion. We didn't want to have this discussion a couple months back because we had our U.S. elections. We had the presidential elections, and we didn't really want to come off as biased to any party. We didn't want, to aggravate anybody. So we felt like this is still an important discussion that people need to hear and be interested in, because politics does play a massive role in your life, and learning about it any which way, if it's interesting with philosophies or looking at it as like history, politics are important. Going back onto Plato, though, he's widely considered the pivotal figure of history in ancient Greece and Western philosophy, along with his teacher Socrates. So everybody's familiar with Socrates as well. These are all they were all in the same group. They hung out with the same peeps, And his most famous student was Aristotle.
So obviously a whole bunch of smart people gathered together for sure. I mean, these are all really big names in the philosophical community. So it's great seeing him being on top of that,
Yeah, and as I said earlier, he's also considered to be the founder of political philosophy. So I felt like taking this route of talking about philosophy and politics, like I mentioned earlier, is probably the best way to go about this and not seem like we're biased to like a political party when we are discussing this. Because if we're on the side of either party, it's going to be on the side of knowledge and seeking growth for ourselves and understanding politics in general. So I'm going to start off with one of his quotes, heavy on the politics. It's going to be, one of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Pretty heavy one, right?
Yeah.
Because when you really think about it, yeah. If you don't play a part in politics and you just leave it to the ones that, the ones that they know what they're doing, you don't want any part in it, you don't want to research it, and we're just going to sit back and wait for all like the governors, the senators. We're expecting that they have the best goals for everybody, We're just going to sit back and expect them to not be greedy, not be, manipulated in any sense. They have the best opinion for their people. We'll just let them write it out. You're going to start to realize, we're not living in a world we want to end up. The world that, greed takes on many forms. And I'm not saying that, our government's greedy, or I'm just talking about, people with power tend to fall into, what is it, like a power struggle? Yeah. When they're not opposed, or there's nobody arguing their points, because then they're going to feel like they're always right. And, that focus on what was the population is going to start to narrow down to themselves.
Yeah, the ego is going to inflate. And like that's the reason why in democracy that we have here, why another example to show you guys why it's so important to get into politics, even on a small level, just enough to know what you're talking about and to just have that basic level of involvement, is that everybody has the right to vote. Well, the majority of people have the right to vote, right? I mean, of course, you get felonies and stuff like that. But in general, you get the right to vote. The common citizen does. There's a reason for that. And we all need to do our duty and participate in our politics.
Yeah. And a point on that as well is like, if you're not playing your role or at least learning about politics or local government in any sense, you're at that point just giving away your citizenship, your right to vote. Like you said, you're giving away the possibility of the coin toss of either living under a dictatorship or actually having like the honorable president that we hope to have, right? And another example, before I explain more into this, is another quote by him where he talks about dictatorship naturally arises out of democracy, and the most aggravated form of tyranny and slavery out of the most extreme liberty. And this is a perfect example of learning from the past, which we've talked about a week ago, and letting those inferior in knowledge lead your nation, because they aren't going to really have the full understanding of what the population is if they were always born into wealth and power. So you're just giving that up to them, and then that's just going to go out of hand and get to an extreme where it then becomes a dictatorship, or it then becomes, this extreme, I don't want to say sides, but an extreme side. And it's really, really out of your control at that point, because you allowed it as somebody who just wanted to take the seat back and relax and not involve yourself.
Yeah, I feel like that's what kind of drives people to go to an extreme side, because if you're on an extreme side, you probably don't know what you're talking about.
Correct.
Because that's the perfect example. If you're going to lean back and be lazy about it, you're going to lean back further into that side. Because the more that, you can't fight ignorance and you can't fight arrogance. And if you have both those things, if you don't know what you're talking about, and if you're just going to ride the wave on something that you think is right or you feel is right, and not get some hard evidence on it and figure out what it's all about, you're not going to be able to have any logical discussion with anybody about it, and it's going to just push you further back into your corner.
Yeah. And this is where like the difficult discussions come into play, right? This is the part where people really don't want to accept, or they want to be quick to cancel, and this is why it's touchy subjects on politics nowadays, because it's very few and far in between that you find the people that want to be in the middle of the political spectrum, right? And examples that I can pull from like nowadays situations, look back a couple months at the BLM movement, right? Of course, this was all started with the correct mindset in mind. Everybody wants to avoid the racial injustices and all this stuff, but then you let the extremes come out. Let it be right, let it be left, whichever side. You get the extremes that come out and push narratives too far. And instead of looking back at your past and realizing that you're just falling into it again, but you're doing it on your terms now. Like now, for example, we have, I've seen videos where people are talking about colored only parks. White people aren't allowed in there.
Right.
But it's the colored people that are saying, this is our park.
Yeah.
You're segregating yourself.
Yeah.
You're falling back into the whites.
Literal segregation.
Yeah, where whites and colored people had different bathrooms, water fountains. You're doing it on your terms now.
Seats on the bus. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like they're pushing it too far back the other way, but it's okay because now it's
because they're in charge, so it's their turn to be in the front. Yeah.
But you're fighting for the equal rights.
Right.
But again, I'm not taking sides. I'm just using these as examples of extremes going too far and the masses following that herd mentality and ultimately just not learning from the past.
Yeah.
Because this isn't even a thought that's registering to them. They're like, these people are thinking that this is the correct course of action to take. Whereas this is the reason why you were fighting against it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you get for not really learning about it, you know, and not learning from your past. And that's why you end up getting things where history repeats itself and you push these movements that way. And then look, you know, underneath that logic there, you end up back with a form of segregation. It's not great, you know, and if you go back even further, just a couple years further back from that, you have things like the feminist movement, where again started off great. It was like made sense. Okay, we're talking about, you know, equal wages, equal capabilities and capacities and whatnot. And it's like, well, of course we're all human. That makes sense. We can all fight for this. And then look at where it went next, and look how it kept going down this path. And it's like people got into the movement that shouldn't be a part of that, don't know what they're talking about. And now we have these, you know, these men and women's sports, these women and women's sports. And it's like you're getting this field completely dominated and torn apart because of this movement that started off with the best intentions.
Yeah.
And it's just going down those dark paths because you get these rallies, you get these movements, these pushes from people who should have no part in any of that stuff.
And wasn't there an example as well with like Nazis, that something that they kind of like relived their past, and it wasn't even that long of a time span in between the World War?
Yeah. After World War II.
Okay.
Right. Hitler lost. Sorry, spoiler.
He did.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Right. Hitler lost World War II. And so after that, and Germany became Germany again, and everything started going like normal for the first, I want to say it was 10 years. It was a very short period of time. In their schools, they banned all the literature that was written by Hitler and the generals and everything. And they banned really any education on the topic of Nazi Germany. And they were like, well, if we teach it, you know, it's going to empower people to want to continue down that path.
Yeah, the people that are interested in it are going to continue to, you know.
Right. So like, no, if you teach people about Nazis, all you're going to do is create more of them, right? And then in that short period of time, like I said, it was like 8 years to 12 years, around that range there, they started seeing rises in extremist groups in Germany again. And they were like, oh, wait, this isn't good. Like, maybe we need to try this the other way around. And they started teaching about Nazi Germany, about Hitler. They started analyzing his literature and his works and talking about how that stuff just does not work. It's not right. It's not good for the world. It's not good for the country. And then look at Germany today.
Yeah.
They teach ethics in their schools. Germans are the most polite people you'll ever meet. Yeah. You know, they're never going to really do you wrong. And that's why, because they don't focus on that necessarily like that positivity side of it. They go through and they analyze the dirty parts of history, and they're like, no, look at what we did. You know, because we fell for these types of ideologies, we killed millions of people because we eventually believed that was right. So now we need to teach against that.
Yeah. But
we need to teach it.
Yeah, and this is literally hand in hand with politics. Like, this needs to be this is the root of the educational system. But if you're not involved with politics, how are you going to affect that? How are you going to know that they're not teaching it? How are you going to know that they are teaching it? So it's the more you seek to understand politics, the bigger picture you're eventually going to be able to change. But another one of Plato's teachings and quotes that he was giving out is that good people do not need laws to tell them to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws. This one makes sense. This one, like, I don't even need to give you an example for this, but I will. So another really interesting point of discussion that people are always talking about is gun control, because gun control in America isn't handled very well, right?
So they say.
So they say. But then that's the discussion itself. This is where people that either have been victim to certain things or have family that have been, have bad experiences with guns or gun control in general, kind of have a bias towards it. But the argument towards gun control has been going on for a while, such as if we take away guns from the people and normal civilians, right? If we take away that freedom of the access to get guns, right? Who's to stop the robber or the criminal from still getting guns on the black market or getting guns by alternate illegal means? You know, if the point of getting the gun in the first place is to protect your family, because if somebody comes to rob you, do you want to wait 15, 20 minutes until the cops get there if you even have the time to call the cops? The whole point of having the gun in the first place is to be able to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your land. But then you want to argue against that.
I mean, that does go hand in hand with that quote there, because it's, when you talk about, especially like creating laws for these types of things, you're like, okay, guns are bad, so we need to make laws against them, right? All you're doing is you're stripping the good people from the resource.
Correct.
You're not stripping the bad people. The guy that's going to use that gun illegally
is always going to find a way to get that gun illegally.
He was already going to commit a crime. So now if owning the gun's a crime, no big deal. Because the guy that's going to rob you, he's probably already a felon. He probably already doesn't legally own that gun, you know? So it's a good quote, and there's a lot of truth to that, because, you know, bad people will always find a way around the laws. And I think what our political system does for that kind of gets it wrong. Because every time that like bad people commit these crimes, and not only with gun control, but with anything, we punish the good people. Because we make more stringent laws, more specified laws, I guess you could say.
More hoops to jump through.
More hoops to jump through. And the reality of it is, you need to find, and it really just comes down to the punishment system.
Yeah. Because
these bad people that are committing these crimes, nobody's asking why. Everybody just wants the punishment. Everybody wants the eye for an eye. And that's not how it should be like.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, these people that are committing these crimes, why are they doing it? You know? You put them in rehabilitation centers. And not necessarily just for drugs, for anything. You know, a lot of people out there that are going around robbing stores, doing this, doing that, they don't have a sense of direction in their life, or they're really desperate for money that they're willing to commit a crime to go and get a couple $100 from a store. You know, get through there, rehabilitate him, because, I mean, that guy's willing to make sacrifices in his life, right? You know?
Yeah, and a point to make towards that is, for the extremists as well, this is why you need to have that knowledge in what you are voting for, if you are voting, hopefully, and being involved in politics, even at the most basic level, to just whatever your county or your state's asking for, at least have knowledge in that. Because if you're going to sit around and say, oh, we should just ban guns, but you have no knowledge of how to even, like, the process to get a gun, or what it takes to have one, like the licensing and all that stuff in your state, why are you going to vote to just ban it? You're coming into that argument thinking you can just go to the store and just pick one up, right? With nothing.
Yeah.
But then there's really already a process, you know, there's background checks, there's licensing you have to get, there's courses you have to take. But then the extremist comes in and then bans it. But then look at places like Venezuela, where they take all of the firearms away from everybody, and that became a dictatorship.
Yeah.
Because now the government's the only one with the firepower.
Right.
Who's to stop the government from coming into your home, kicking everything down, and then becoming the bad guy?
Yeah. Well, I think what stops that is how we project a European simulation for the U.S. And we always talk about, oh, look what they do here in Europe. Look what they do here in Europe. This is so much better for the people, this, that, and the other. And they think that we push towards that direction, when all you do for us is you go a little further south and look at places like Venezuela, and it's like it's such a similar process with such a drastic change in the way that in the results, and people don't realize that, and they don't realize those fine little differences in what they're voting for and what they're creating. And it's not only here in America, it's in every country. Even in Europe and a lot of countries over there that are pushing really close on that borderline level of socialism. And it's like, you get some really heated places, I know they have a lot of like upheaval in France and whatnot lately because of those types of things. And it's like they allow those bad politicians, or like I said, being led by your inferiors, or letting these inferiors push the boundary so far because they're going to. And as soon as they get to this line, then they're like, oh, no, wait, stop. We're going to change. We need to do something about this. That's not right. And they're like, oh, but the car's not inching forward. The car's hurling past that line at 100 miles an hour. And it takes some serious, immediate action to stop that vehicle from crossing that line.
Yeah. And then going back to letting those inferiors control different things and being informed on like the issue itself. So instead of them just putting out the law or the bill to pass and that the thing that you're voting on, right? Instead of letting them just say, hey, it's either or, either we ban it or we don't, right? Understand that there's more leeway that you can vote for. You can vote for more barriers or more checks or balances or whatever you want to call them in between those options instead of just ban or no ban.
Yeah.
Because they know that you don't have the knowledge in that to act upon it. So they're just going to give you, hey, the extremes, pick one.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen. But one of the last quotes, because I see that we're running out of time here, one of the last quotes that Plato has is, there are two things a person should never be angry at: what they can help and what they cannot.
Good old Stoicism.
Stoicism at its finest, right?
Yeah.
But this is also a point towards seeking that knowledge, because the whole point of this conversation and being involved in politics is to, understand how serious this could be. This could get out of hand very fast. And it all falls down on the individual, because you need to be able to act upon the political system and having the knowledge of who you're voting for or who you're not voting for. So seek out the understanding of what will happen if a law passes or fails, first off. Seek out the knowledge of what the law entails to begin with. See what's right for you, for your community, because I know certain laws can be drastically different for people living in the country where they have to drive miles to see their neighbor, or people that are crammed together in a major city.
Yeah, I mean, to quote the great Nancy Pelosi, you have to pass a bill in order to know what's actually in it. Something that was said. Quote me on it. Quote her on it. But that's the point. A lot of these things that pass, it's always so much more in the package, which is why it is important to know your politics and know what's going on and understanding these simple principles. And it's like, why are a lot of these things getting hidden? It's like with the last stimulus check that came in, congratulations, you got your $700 and you also got yourself over $3 a gallon in gas. Why? Oh, that $700 you got? By the way, there was a tax increase on the gas that was also in that bill, amongst many, many other things. But that just being the one that's going to impact people the most.
Yeah.
You're going to pay that $700 back almost right away. By the end of this year, in gas alone, you are paying back that $700. Trust me.
Yeah. And that's why they're able to sneak their way into, these little bills that you just don't have the knowledge of, or even the drive to want to look into it. And that's where it gets very crucial. And this last point, I wrote it down because I really wanted to, hit the nail on the head on this one. I want you people to just stop blindly picking and choosing who you vote for. Expand your horizons and start to understand your role that you can play in your local and your your nation, your national politics. Realize that you live in a nation. Oh, sorry. Before you realize that you live in a nation under a dictatorship, because I'm pretty sure nobody thinks that that's the ideal nation that they want to live in. Because my humble opinion, again, is that I believe that freedom is at the core of every human being. I feel like that's an innate quality that every human being wants to have, is freedom. So why are you going to let somebody else suppress that within yourself by just blindly voting or not even voting? Why are you going to let somebody else suppress that within yourself by not seeking out the knowledge in the politics?
I mean, it's true, man. You think all these dictatorships, all these countries are like that because the people wanted it like that? You know? I mean, that'd be really foolish to think.
Yeah.
You know, you don't realize, people don't realize what actually goes on behind the scenes to make a country like that happen.
Yeah. And to just take us out here, one of his last quotes, "No law or ordinance is mightier than understanding." So again, seek out that knowledge for yourself. Always strive for growth, personal growth at least, even if it's in the most basic form of just understanding what your local, state, community, government, whatever they're asking for, whatever they're trying to vote on, at least get your foot in the door, understand at least that, be involved in politics because it is very important.
Yeah, I guess my only thing would be don't get too stressed out doing it. Don't get too much white hair, because I know it definitely put some salt and pepper in my hair the last couple elections. But a way that we can improve on our understanding is by regularly checking back in on this channel, which you can do if you subscribe. Hit the bell icon. While you're at it, like the video, share it with your friends and your family. We're always here to help people understand things just a little bit more. Any topic that comes up that we feel is necessary and needs some immediate action, we always come on the show, talk about it, and just give you guys another perspective. So we love having you guys here. You can always check out our videos every Monday and Wednesday at 8 a.m. EST. We're dropping new content on Sundays, and you can always follow us on our social medias. All those links are down below. And until next time, go on and get